Can you believe it's been 30 years since Forrest Gump came out? It's still one of the most beloved movies ever made. But you know what? It's also one of the most fiercely debated. So today, we're going to peel back the layers on this total cinematic phenomenon. We're going to get into what makes it so powerful and, yeah, so controversial.
So, here's the big question, right? How on earth can one single movie be a total masterpiece to millions of people, but at the same time, others see it as this, I don't know, dangerous, even offensive piece of propaganda? It's wild. Let's dig in and figure this out.
All right, first up, the Gump phenomenon. I mean, to really get a handle on the controversy, you first have to understand just how huge this movie was. When it came out in '94, it wasn't just a hit movie. No way. It was a full-blown cultural event.
And look, the awards circuit agreed. At the Oscars, this film didn't just win, it absolutely dominated. We're talking 6 Academy Awards. And not just any awards, the big ones. Best Picture, Best Director for Robert Zemeckis, and of course, Best Actor for Tom Hanks. This wasn't just a movie people liked. This was Hollywood officially calling it an all-time great.
And really, at its heart, the appeal is pretty simple, isn't it? Michael Connor Humphreys, the kid who played young Forrest, he really nailed it when he called it the definition of a feel-good movie. I mean, it's the ultimate underdog story, right? A guy who triumphs just by being decent and kind. It just makes you feel good in a way that's actually pretty rare.
Okay, but the movie is doing so much more than just telling one guy's story. Its ambition is way, way bigger. It basically turns Forrest into this kind of historical chameleon. He just pops up almost by accident at all these major turning points, making him this innocent eyewitness to some of the most chaotic decades in American history.
Yeah, people have called it a docu-fable, and that's a perfect description. It literally weaves his life into the fabric of the country's story. I mean, think about it. He inspires Elvis's dance moves, he's there for the Vietnam War, he meets multiple presidents, and he even accidentally helps expose Watergate. His life is basically a highlight reel of post-war America.
So, it's no surprise that, for a lot of people, this movie feels like a massive celebration of classic American values. It's all right there. Individualism, hard work, equality, progress. It's this powerful myth that says, hey, it doesn't matter who you are or what your limitations are. If you just keep going, you can achieve the American dream. But, and this is where things get really interesting, if you peel back that top layer, you find the movie is just jam-packed with symbols. And once you start looking at those symbols, it opens the door to some much, much deeper and honestly, some pretty wild interpretations of what this story is really about.
You know the line, we all know the line. Life is like a box of chocolates. But it's so much more than just a cute, folksy saying. You could argue it's the entire philosophical core of the movie. It's this idea that life is random, it's uncertain, and that worldview stands in stark contrast to the people closest to Forrest. And this is where you really see the film's big debate play out. Destiny versus randomness. You've got Lieutenant Dan, who is absolutely convinced he had this fixed destiny to die in battle, like his ancestors. Then you have Jenny, who's the complete opposite. She's that feather, just floating aimlessly, feeling like she has zero control. And Forrest? He's kind of the synthesis of the two, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, life is a little bit of both. Okay, now hold on to your hats, because this brings us to one of the wildest, but also one of the most popular fan theories about this movie. And it's this. What if Forrest Gump isn't actually about Forrest Gump? What if he's not the protagonist at all, but instead he's a symbolic, kind of Christ-like figure, and his whole purpose is to save the people he loves? I know, it sounds out there, but listen to the evidence. First, he's fatherless, right? A symbolic parallel. He's portrayed as completely pure, totally innocent, sinless, you could say. He sits at a bus stop telling his life story to strangers in these simple parable-like tales. But the biggest piece of evidence? He helps Lieutenant Dan find peace, make his peace with God, and in a very symbolic way, he helps him walk again. It completely reframes the movie as a story of redemption for them.
All right. Let's flip the coin, because for every person who sees this beautiful spiritual allegory we just talked about, there's a critic who sees something much, much darker. So let's start with the script. One of the bluntest critiques you'll find is that the writing is, well, terrible. The argument goes that the characters are paper thin, that they don't talk like real people. Instead, they just spout these cutesy, folksy catchphrases that sound profound but are actually kinda empty.
And that criticism leads to a much more serious charge, that the film's portrayal of Forrest is actually deeply offensive. The argument here that he's not really a character with a rich inner life. Instead, he's a caricature, a cartoon imbecile whose intellectual disability becomes the punchline for joke after joke, basically dehumanizing him for laughs and cheap sentimentality.
Then you get to the political angle, which is maybe the most intense critique of all. It basically says the movie pushes this really dangerous idea that ignorance is bliss. Think about it. Forrest, who is completely oblivious to all the political turmoil around him, racism, the war, everything, he gets rewarded. He's happy. Meanwhile, Jenny, who dives headfirst into the counterculture, the anti-war protests, all of it, what happens to her? She's punished with trauma, addiction, and ultimately death. The takeaway for critics is pretty stark. Don't get involved, don't question things, just keep your head down.
So how can one story lead to such completely opposite takeaways? Well, a massive clue lies in something a lot of people don't know. The movie is radically different from the book it's based on. The changes they made are everything. I mean, just look at this comparison. It's a total transformation. The Forrest in the book, he's a foul-mouthed, sometimes aggressive guy who's also a math genius. He becomes a chess master and goes to space, with an orangutan. Yeah, for real. The book is this weird, dark satire. The filmmakers basically took that character, sanded off every single rough edge, and turned him into the gentle, innocent soul we all know. They completely changed the tone to create that heartwarming epic.
So where does that leave us? What's the final verdict on Forrest Gump? Well, after 3 decades, I think it's pretty clear that it's not just one thing. It's this incredibly complex cultural artifact that was almost perfectly designed to be read in completely different and often totally contradictory ways.
Ultimately, the best way to think about it is like a Rorschach test. You know, one of those ink blot tests. What you see in it says a lot about you. Some people look at it and see a beautiful celebration of American values. Others look at the exact same film and see a deep, spiritual story about salvation. And then a third group looks at it and sees a really dangerous political fantasy. And the crazy part is, they're all watching the same movie.
So the question really isn't, what is Forrest Gump? The question is, what is Forrest Gump to you? Is it a heartwarming story about the triumph of innocence, or is it a dangerous fantasy with a hidden agenda? I'll leave you with that. Because when you really think about it, the answer, well, it's like a box of chocolates. You really never know what you're going to get.